Nice to have you here again. I think it was a great evening. Who has been last night participating? So you have all good memories, you feel good, probably you're even happy. I'm happy. I'm happy because I have a great panel, I have a great audience, and I think we will spend a good time this morning here, although some of you, including myself, may be a little bit tired. Well, I'm also happy because this is now the second time since last year that I have the possibility, together with Knowledge for Innovation, to work with the Polish people. I've never been to Poland before, cooperating last year in October with the Ministry of Science and Higher Education. As you know, we organized the third European Innovation Summit in Warsaw, and it was also a discussion about ecosystems. We had a very positive experience, and we continue this experience now with the team of Andrzej Szymansko, which is a pleasure to work with. And we already have plans for the next step, which would be to present and discuss the WIRE 2012 outcome at the 4th European Innovation Summit in Brussels, which will take place from 9 to 10 October in the European Parliament. So I'm very happy to have these nice speakers with me, and I can promise there will be no overlap. They all have their own story, interesting stories. It will be also interesting in the sense that while we were speaking yesterday more about the system for smart specialization, today we will go on the practical side and learn and have good examples on how these innovation ecosystems are working in reality. I like the term innovation ecosystem, but ecosystems, they could also be at the EU level. How do EU policies, how do EU instruments, how do they relate to what happens on the national, on the local, on the regional level? Where is the coherence? How do we translate the developments from Brussels down to the local level? And for me, one aspect is very important in this ecosystem, which is about relating research and innovation. I think we have great ideas how to do this with the upcoming new framework 2014-2020, but yet we have to prove how we can relate research actions to innovation actions, how we can build the synergies from bottom up through the cohesion policy to excellence and back down to the market, bring the product, services and research results to the market. But I'm sure we can learn today already how this can function from our speakers. And I am happy to introduce to you, first of all, Martin Koch from the European Commission. He is a true financial engineering expert. He is doing this at the Commission, but he has been doing this before already for a number of years. He will explain how those financial instruments function, what their scope is, and for whom they are made. And he will address particularly SME aspects and the regional dimension. Maybe the most to the ground speaker and the perfect practitioner that we have among us today is Mr. Atilla Toth, CEO from Novitech. But his particular experience is not only with putting in place in his own company an innovation system, a system that motivates his employees to become innovative workers, to contribute to the innovation process, and he will explain to us why he thinks that this is so important. He's also, I think, an evaluator for FP7. He is serving the Commission with a certain a number of services, so he knows everything from the policy side down to the sometimes difficult reality in motivating workers to become more innovative. Helena Nilsson is representing the Swedish Västra Götaland region. While looking at her CV, one could say she represents an ecosystem on her own. Currently, she's a director of research, development, and education. Very good combination, I think. She has experience as a cluster manager and as a policy expert. In any case, she represents a region I think that we are all jealous of, because in her region, the percentage of GDP that is invested in R&D is 4.5%. And also, they have a very interesting strategic approach. They say, well, we have all these grand challenges from climate change to aging population. It is real big challenges, but we turn them into opportunities, and this is what we are working on. So she will give us the example on how to make out of the challenges a great opportunity. We have another interesting example from the Eindhoven region in the Netherlands, which will be presented by Edgard van Leest. Eindhoven was named the most intelligent community in the world in 2011. I think he can explain to us how this is done. Is it the average IQ of the population, or is it some other factors? Their ecosystem approach is also very interesting, because what they do when things become more difficult, the actors, they just move closer together. And not only they move closer together, but they also open up. They open up for social innovation, they open up for the user groups. They try to make innovation a part of everybody in their region. Finally, we have Sandor Erdo he's the Chief Policy Advisor for the Ministry of Economy in Hungary. He played an important role during the Hungarian EU presidency. He's a scientist by training, but he has quite a lot of experience in business, in financing issues from equity to IPO, IPR, and he is, first of all, in his presentation, the chairman of EUREKA. The chairmanship is with Hungary since last July, and he will explain to us how EUREKA contributes to this regional innovation ecosystem. Yeah, last but not least, our moderator, Richard Granger. He has been, or not our moderator, our rapporteur. So, Richard, he has been the rapporteur also for the third European Innovation Summit in Warsaw, and I don't know who of you had the chance to have a look at the outcome and the 7 key messages from the Warsaw Summit, but I think it's very interesting, and it relates also very much to our topic today. So, are you ready? Good. Then I would like to invite Martin Koch from the Commission to start with this presentation.
Can you start the presentation?
Can I start the presentation?
So again, very good morning. It's my job to warm you up a bit. Hope that will work. I would like to speak for roughly 10 minutes about European funding instruments or finance instruments sponsored by the European budget. And I will speak about our current instruments of the 7th Framework Program, but also look a bit into the future of Horizon 2020, explain a bit the rationale behind it, and I also will give you a few examples of what we have done. Let me start at the beginning really with an explanation, because in my presentation, in the title, there is a typical EU jargon called EU financial instruments. That doesn't mean anything to the outside world normally. Let me explain what we mean by that. Normally, the intervention of the EU budget is through grants. And when we talk about financial instruments, we mean everything which is not a grant. So we mean the whole range of funding and finance we can provide through our partners in the market. It can take the form of equity or risk capital. It can take the form of guarantees to guarantee loans. It can be also other risk-sharing arrangements, and it can also be a combination of that. In other words, we are totally free and flexible in providing funding and finance as a commission through our budget with the help of banks and guarantee associations in various forms. And for me, it's important to show to you we are very flexible. We are doing this at the moment, and we will do this in the future even more. And I will also explain why we will use these instruments, EU financial instruments, in the future even a bit more. But here are the options we are having at the moment and in the future, how to fund and support investments in research, development, and innovation. We don't use these financial instruments at every occasion. It has to be justified. And we have a few guiding principles when we use that kind of instruments. First of all, we want to address market or funding gaps. And at the moment, in these critical times, there are a number of market and funding gaps. But in our area, it's mainly for innovative and high-tech SMEs, for companies who want to innovate. And at the moment, and it was also true in the past, and it will be true in the future, I'm afraid, banks are very reluctant to take risk and more risk. And investments in R&D and innovation are by nature more risky. What we want to do is really address the gap in accepting risk by risk sharing. And this is what we want to use, why we want to use our instruments in that particular part. Also, whenever we provide our funding in the form of instruments, be it guarantees or equity or loans, is we want to complement schemes in member states. We don't want to compete with member states. We want to complement schemes, and we want to be of added value. Only then we intervene. And the third guiding principle, also important, is we want to attract additional funding from the market. So whenever we put our budget on the table for risk sharing, we expect that either public or notably private investors also come on board. By doing that and looking at that, we can also multiply the total funding. So we want to increase the total funding and catalyze with our money funding from the market. That's a very, very important aspect. And only if these aspects come together, we provide budget for funding. In our area, DG Research and Innovation, we have used since 2007 financial instruments. I come to a few more details in a few moments. What we have seen and we have experienced since 2007 with it is, and they are really, really positive, is we have used financial instruments, notably loans and guarantees, to complement our grant financing very nicely. We have also seen that many projects who have been supported via grants at the previous stage, when they come to market, when they apply research at industrial scale, they don't need get a grant, they need a loan, they need a guarantee, and therefore our instruments were really, really useful, also in helping to introduce new technologies. What we also have seen is by working with banks in the market, we can really establish partnerships and we can really mobilize additional funding. That has really worked. And for each euro we have put on the table since 2007, we have received from the market €5 more. So that's really a nice leverage effect. What I also would like to stress is, and that is a feature which you also find in our future instruments, is they are demand-driven. What does it mean? That means we operate on the principle first come, first served. So wherever there is a good project from any country, in any sector, in the area of R&D, we are ready to finance it if it fits. So there is no ex-ante earmarking for a country, for a sector, for a technology. We are really open, and that's really important in my view to really get the projects from the market as they come along. Let us look for a few moments on our current instruments a bit more in detail, not really in detail, but I would like to show you a few features how we work today, because that is also the bridge to my next part, how we will work in the future, because there's a link between the present and the future. We have one key instrument at the moment. It's called, again, a terrible jargon, but it's called the Risk Sharing Finance Facility, or in short, RSFF. This is a loan and guarantee instrument. We are operating since 2007 together with the European Investment Bank in Luxembourg, the EIB, and other banks in the market in member states. And we share the risk with the European Investment Bank, meaning risk sharing here means we put something aside, a kind of equity cushion or a kind of guarantee in case loans or guarantees are used or loans are not being repaid. It's only there in case something goes wrong. If everything goes fine, we don't touch our money, but in case something goes wrong, we are there. And that gives insurance in a market to also provide funding to more risky projects. The European Investment Bank has provided a number of loans in the area of 7.5 million to 200 million. This is rather large, and I explain why that is the case, but I also come to the SME factor a bit later. But this is at the moment the range between 7.5 million and 200 million loan finance for R&D and innovation investments. This scheme, RSFF, is not a subsidized scheme. It's a market-rated or market-based scheme. We charge interest rate, including a risk premium. And it also works because you don't have to subsidize financing for good projects. They can pay that if they are really good. What we cover also is, and that's also a very important feature, is we are really broad and open. We cover investments from research, development, demonstration projects, and innovation, the whole spectrum. Because we are working with the industry, with companies, and they at the same time do research, they demonstrate, and they innovate at the same time. And we have seen this in many projects. You can't really say, this is now the R&D part, this is innovation. It's all linked, and you have to be flexible to cover everything at the same time. Also in terms of target groups, because our 7th framework program is pretty broad, we are also very open to that. Our customers or our clients, beneficiaries were notably mid-sized and larger companies, but also private-public partnerships, research infrastructures, very large-scale projects, standalone projects like a wind farm in offshore, for instance, is one project. We can also finance that, but also SMEs. I come to the SME part a bit later because I think in this audience there might be SMEs, there might be also banks, and it's also interesting to look at the SME part. Again, I want to stress we worked on the basic principle first come, first served, so really open wherever there was a good project in any member state and from any sector, we were ready to look at that and finance it if appropriate. A few results. I don't want to bother you too much with data, but since 2007 we have, or the EIB has signed loans in the area of 7.5 billion loans. It's really a large-scale scheme. If you look at the number of projects, we had so far 76 projects. If you make a quick calculation, you arrive at the conclusion these are really large average loans per project. That is the case. We have also smaller loan amounts, but we also have had a number of larger, really large projects like a wind farm or a solar power plant in Spain, and they are really large and they need large amounts of finance. So the average is relatively high, but we also had a number of smaller loans with mid-sized companies. And if you look at the sectors, it's again this openness. We had projects from engineering industry, life science, ICT, energy, etc. At the end, in the second column, you find SMEs, smaller projects, 1%. That, of course, is the problem because SMEs need normally smaller loan amounts. And we have recognized that over time, and we have introduced for that reason a particular sub-scheme for SMEs. And I will come to this in a few moments because it's at the moment up and running. It might be interesting for those who are an SME or who are a bank to look at that because we are providing finance and guarantees until 2013 under this scheme. I would like to spend a few moments on that. We have launched in February 2012, so a few months ago, a scheme called Risk Sharing Instrument, or RSI. And this is a guarantee scheme. We work with the European Investment Fund in Luxembourg, and the EIF is providing guarantees to banks, to local banks, to regional banks, who provide loans to SMEs between 25,000 euros and 7.5 million. This is exactly the range where SMEs operate. So from very small amounts to relatively large amounts, and the instrument we support is a guarantee. The loan comes from the local or regional bank. Our target group here are research-intensive and innovative SMEs, or smaller mid-caps, up to 500 employees, who have a difficult time in accessing funding at the moment. I don't want to go into the details of the guarantee. This is more for the banks, but I wanted to show to you these are also conditions which are very favorable to promote those guarantees. In terms of timing at the moment, the European Investment Fund has launched a call for expression of interest. That means it's on the internet. Here's the webpage link. All banks and companies interested in this scheme can look at all the conditions. They are totally transparent, and at the moment the EIF is selecting partner banks across Europe who want to partner with the EIB, EIF and want to receive a guarantee for their loans to SMEs. Very interesting. We expect a high demand for that guarantee, and please look at that into the internet, into all the criteria. I want just to list the 3 main criteria of companies we want to promote. I said it's innovative SMEs and R&D intensive SMEs. We have defined this pretty easily by defining SMEs who can ask for support either if they invest in R&D and innovation, or if they are fast growing, because fast or high growth is normally linked to innovation, or if they are SMEs, normal SMEs today, not innovative, which want to become innovative in the future, and they invest into R&D and innovation. Also, they are mostly welcome. That is the current situation at the moment. Let's look, we have 2 minutes more?
2 more minutes.
Good. Let's look at the future, because the future is around the corner. We start in 2014 with the new program, Horizon 2020, but we are preparing it, of course, now. And we have proposed a budget for these financial instruments, loans, guarantees, and equity of 3.7 billion for the next 7 years. That will, of course, be multiplied by private capital. It's quite significant. And we want to spend at least 1/3 of this amount for SME business, for SME guarantees, SME equity, SME loans. We have proposed straightforwardly 2 instruments, again, a loan and a guarantee scheme, and a new instrument for equity. Because sometimes, and I come to this a bit later, SMEs want to have equities, especially if they are young and early stage. In the area of loan and guarantees, we would like to continue our approach, what I just called RSFF. We will have another larger scheme, open, demand-driven, for a broad range of target groups, mid-sized companies, PPPs, standalone projects. We will work again with the European Investment Bank and other banks together. This is the one part of the loan and guarantee scheme. We will have also a guarantee facility for SMEs. I just explained this, what is currently being operated. We want to continue this because we think there's a big demand for that. Target group, again here, SMEs and small mid-caps, investing in R&D and innovation. And we will also start with guarantees for relatively small loan amounts, starting with 150,000 euros per project. Again, the typical SME client in need of small-scale finance. One word on the aspect of other instruments. We want to implement this facility together with our colleagues from DG Enterprise, responsible for the COSME program. They also have a guarantee instrument that will be complementary. And we will also work with our colleagues from the structure and regional funds, because we don't want to have competing schemes. We want to design schemes which are complementary and which are really fit into a bigger picture. So we are also working with other DGs in the Commission to have a coherent approach. And the second instrument is equity. Also here we want to focus on early stage capital, where there's the biggest market gap at the moment, because we want to focus on young early stage companies in need of smaller scale equity investments to put R&D into place, to start a company with a first good product, a first good idea. This is our focus here, and I think we address really a market gap at the moment in Europe. Also here we will implement this facility in the area of equity, not alone, but with our colleagues running the COSME program and also with our colleagues running the structural and regional funding instruments. On top of that, this is about providing finance. We will also provide accompanying measures in Horizon 2020, which is a bit of technical assistance for banks, how to operate the schemes. We'll also look at business angels, private individuals providing finance, very interesting target group, but also we will work with foundations and corporate venturing provided by companies. So we have the whole range of possible partners, and we want to look at all of that because this is the ecosystem idea. Finally, I would like to give you, if that works, an overview of how we operate in terms of timing. We have proposed this Horizon 2020 with the instruments I just outlined. At the moment, 2012, there's a big discussion in the Council with the Member States and the European Parliament. We have to agree and get a decision by those two. 2 seconds. Then it will be decided by Council and Parliament. We will prepare everything in 2013 to be ready and operational in 2014. That's not so long, and we will really speed up that, but we are on track. And last but not least, 5 seconds on top. Here is more information on the existing instruments I mentioned, RSFF, RSI, the guarantee, very interesting, on the proposed future instruments, Horizon 2020 and COSME, and more information on, in general, on the EU financial instruments. And with that slide, I want to thank you very much for your attention so early in the morning. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Michael, for this comprehensive overview. It seems to be a science in itself. I mean, my guiding principle with regard to financial engineering is that at some point in time, the income must catch up with the expenses. But I would have a suggestion for the Commission, which is to put in place a website where those who would like to apply for funding, they could just go, put their data in, and then be guided through all the possible instruments that are available to them, how they can access them, what they need to do, and at the end really get a very practical guide for their individual specific case using EU funds, national funds, maybe international funds, even regional and local funds. I think this would be something, because to access these funds, I think still many of the actors are struggling or spending a lot of time. Okay, our next speaker, Edgard van Leest from the Eindhoven region, please.
Thank you. It has been a great conference till so far, I think. I had so many impressions yesterday that I, last night and this morning, decided to rewrite some of my speech. And what strikes me the most yesterday was, of course, the remark that was made by Gerard Klotz. He already stated the importance of failure when you're in the business of innovation and promoting economic structures and economic stimulation. And that brought me to the thought that innovation is not a winner's game. Innovation is a loser's game, as Business Week already some years ago stated. And perhaps you're familiar with this rule of tens. You are? No. This is the idea of having new ideas coming finally into commercialized products in rules of tens. So you need 10,000 unwritten ideas, and only 1,000 of them are put onto paper and shared with others. And of those 1,000, only 100 really paid attention to, are discussed about. And of those 100, only 10 are investigated thoroughly and have an outcome in terms of prototyping or business plan. And from those 10, only one is a commercial success. And the same speaker yesterday said, we have to change the way we do things and come up with new innovation model for industry. And of course, I totally agree. And I do not have this model. But what I do know is this. That is that if we improve this rule of tens by creating a larger number of IDs, let's say we create 20,000 new unwritten IDs, we have 2 commercial successes. But when we improve the survival rate of those process of rule of tens, let's say times 2, then we have 10,000 unwritten IDs, and from those 10,000, not only 1,000 IDs are shared, but 2,000 IDs are shared. And not 200, but 400 IDs have really got this attention and are discussed about. And from those 400, not 40, but 80 have this outcome in terms of prototyping or business plan. And in terms of having commercial success, from those 80 prototypes and business plans, not 8, but 16 are a commercial success. So the survival rate times 2 delivers you times 16 of a benefit. And when it comes to the theme of this conference session, I think this is a striking idea. It's not about building ecosystems, but facilitate the development of the effectiveness of ecosystems and the coming of new ideas eventually into commercial products. The flow of ideas, knowledge incubation, finance, marketing, all have to be taken into account. And in fact, that is the main message of my speech. So thank you. That's a joke, of course. The Brainport Eindhoven region is already mentioned, and thank you for the kind introduction. I think it's rather known because of its triple helix structure, and I will give you some examples later in my presentation. But to understand these examples in full extent, it is it's a necessity to understand also, let's say, the present position and also our past of the Brainport Eindhoven region. And I work there, I represent the Brainport Eindhoven region. I work for the Brainport Development Organization, but our triple helix structure is really the key in this, and that is that we formed, institutionalized more or less, the triple helix in a Brainport Foundation. We have a board of 12, 4 coming from business side, and yes, of course, Philips, CEO, is in this, and also universities, the University of Technology of Eindhoven, of course, but also the University of Tilbury, and local representatives of government, mainly mayors. And since I have a board of 12, I have to work really hard, of course, but the good news is that I only come into action when they agree on some kind of issues. They have consensus. And they have one task only, and that is to make the region, they say in Singapore, to be future ready. And I think that's the nicest wordings of what the actual reasons of existence is of this Brainport Foundation. As named before, we were mentioned in New York City last June. Most intelligent community of the world, the world's smartest region. Each year, the Intelligent Community Forum, which is a think tank based in the USA, selects amongst 350 or so regions the most intelligent one. And it has a lot to do with technology creation, but also putting into practice the technologies for the benefit of the people living in the region and also for the benefit in terms of economic outcome. And on the 7 criteria last year, we had very high scores on each criterion, which are about, let's say, a balanced organization in terms of what we call triple helix, a comprehensive approach of your economic future, new business creation by stimulating new combinations, the connection made between educational systems and labor market, strong supply chain, open innovation, and also broadband connectivity is an important item there. And this jury, which has about 200 worldwide experts on this, stated that especially the high degree of cooperation on all levels, so to say, was the main reason to give us this title. And therefore, as you already was already mentioned on the first slide, the presentation title of my presentation is The Power of Cooperation. This, of course, is a nice league to have the Brainport Eindhoven region positioned in, but the most important outcome of this award, so to say, is that it stimulates local pride. And for us as an organization, it was also the reason, together with industry and knowledge institutions and local communities, to organize for the first time at this week in Eindhoven the Dutch Technology Week. All kind of businesses opened their doors for inhabitants of regions, and also 2 Nobel Prize winners came to the Eindhoven region to stress the importance of doing research. And later this week in New York City, we will hear the name of the next winner of the Most Intelligent Community Award, and of course we will bear our title of 2011 like an Olympic gold medal. Brainport is not a fashionable fashion phenomenon, and I think those old guys over here really stress this. These are the industrial ancestors of our region, and I have to say also the entrepreneurial ancestors. And in the middle, of course, you will see with the head, Anton Philips, who was the founder of the Philips company, who is really important. Also some other leading businessmen at that time for businesses that still exist today are on this slide. I only mentioned you one, and that is the one left to Anton Philips, and he's one from clergy, as you noticed. He is Pater Gelachus van den Elzen, and he brought together what we now call agro companies, at that time farmers, to cooperate, to stimulate the cooperation between those companies at that time to stand firm against bigger companies and bad harvests and that kind of thing. And from the industrialization period, 100 or 115 years even ago, we have seen a rise and fall of companies, of industries in our region, and as also stated by the moderator, we, at each crisis, never spoiled the possibility to bring people closer together. And from this long tradition of successful innovations, we organically grew to the ecosystem we have now and represent now today. And when talking about the Brainport Eindhoven ecosystem, of course, the industry is very important, since only in 1953 our University of Eindhoven was established. That's a different story from Krakow. Based on those fundamentals of Philips and Duff, more or less, you can say we now have this lively ecosystem with numerous economic species, a great economic biodiversity. And when talking about ecosystems, for me, I always imagine this as a picture of a coral reef. The Brainport Eindhoven region, with its high-tech and also design disciplines, contributes highly to the Dutch economy. It's become one of the three pillars of the Dutch economy. With only 4% of the population, 27% of R&D spending by businesses comes from our region, and 42% of patent filings. In terms of patents per capita, we're the number one. We're not the strongest, of course, in terms of the rule of tens. We had an economic growth of 3.2% in 2011, and it was the highest growth in the Netherlands. And what is, I think, really important to stress here, that on a national level we have this complementary economic structure together with totally different economic structure of Amsterdam, which is mainly based on services and finance, and of course the sea harbor near Rotterdam. And for us this is easy to remember, of course. In the correct order, Amsterdam Airport is the biggest concentration of economic activities in the Netherlands, and then the Brainport Eindhoven region is, and then the seaport Rotterdam. So the easiest thing to remember is the ABC. And when it comes to international competition, of course, we are in competition with other high-tech regions around the world, and what I would like to stress here is that we also cooperate with numerous regions in Europe, and we really try to encourage that and foster that and take part and lead sometimes in numerous European projects, not only with the, let's say, usual suspects as Stuttgart. We also had projects at this moment with regions, for instance, as Lodz, Navarra, and Västra in Hungary. The most important slide of my presentation is perhaps this one, and it's about open innovation and the evolvement of the last decades in terms of pure research to open innovation. And of course the question is what will come next. And to be short and to make this relation to the Philips company, in times of pure research, Philips had his sole R&D infrastructure based in the south part of Eindhoven. There was a big fence around this let's say, knowledge factory. The fence was really high and the pointers were turned inward. Philips was not very much afraid of knowledge coming in. They were afraid of knowledge coming out. And this is also the time that Philips was really struck by the competition with Sony on the Video 2000 standard. And they lost this battle. They had an excellent technological product, but it was not a success in the market. And later, in the terms of product research, Philips and Sony joined forces, and together they formed the standard of the CD, the compact disc. And nowadays we see in the whole center, and we'll come to this later, as an example, that numerous companies work closely together to, let's say, come up with new technologies, but also to form world standards. And I will skip this, because this is really boring. What I don't skip is this, the remark that for us, location really matters. Bring companies and knowledge institutions closer together. So campuses are critical in this process of open innovation and the stimulus of it. They are really the centers of gravity for open innovation. And in fact, what you see is that R&D-based companies and research institutes, they source globally ideas and knowledge, of course. But when it comes to put those knowledge into practice, into products that hopefully can be sold and be commercialized, regional proximity and the sharing of the same language really matters. And we have, from that learnings, built some campuses. Not too many, of course. They have their own focus. That is really important. I will come to the high-tech campus later. Yes. Time up? Okay. I have some examples in the last minutes, and the first one is about smart mobility. When you talk to technicians, they say we have a solution for the congestion problems in Europe and in the rest of the world. They stated that congestion is not caused by cars, it's caused by drivers. So you have to eliminate the weak factor, you have to eliminate this driver. Don't let this driver be in control of the speeding up or breaking down of the vehicle, but let cars communicate with each other. And they have done excellent research, of course, inside laboratories. And now we even have a stretch of a highway between Eindhoven and Helena, which is equipped as a fully operational, field operational testing zone. And yes, it's important to involve user groups. This was also stated yesterday. When you come to Eindhoven, you're maybe invited with your own personal vehicle to try to be part of one of those field operational testing in real life. Of course, you have to sign a declaration. You know all what is stated there. If there's any accident, it was not caused by the techniques, of course. The high-tech campus Eindhoven, I will be really short on this one. It was opened in 2002, and it means in the last 10 years, at this moment, 100 companies are situated there, and 8,000 people are employed with 60 nationalities. There's an excellent site plan and also really thought through in terms of building regulations and how to stimulate open innovation in terms of visibility and do everything what is necessary to have interaction between the technicians there. I will skip the Holst case. The second most important thing to understand really thoroughly the position of the Brainport Eindhoven region is this slide, which is stated that the biggest original equipment manufacturers of the Netherlands are based in Eindhoven region or surroundings, but there are really more and more lean and mean companies, marketing machines, and a large part of their manufacturing capability outsource them to the supply chain, and the first and even the second and third tier suppliers are located real nearby. And that is also very important in terms of, let's say, the bundling of resources and also the entanglement you have on those multinational companies based in this region. And the interesting thing is that those suppliers also themselves come up with new products and sell them under their own name in the market. They form together the new OEMs and perhaps the Philips and ASML companies of the future. Sorry? Yes, but to come to an end. We have to come to an end. finally, well, coming back on the rules of tens, I think I did not have the solution in terms of stimulating ecosystems, and I think we have to do all of the things which are important and are stated on this slide. We have formulated ourselves 70 actions in 4 domains to stimulate the economy in the next 5 years. So there will be no one recipe. And also to stimulate this with all those actions and projects, I fully agree also with the statement made yesterday that cluster management, the cluster coordination is a real professional discipline. It should be. As a Brainport development organization, we even have a lot of experience in this. And as a matter of fact, we even have our own graveyard of project logos and cluster initiatives logos, projects who were killed somewhere in the life cycle, from conception to successful implementation. And therefore, I would like to stress once more, remember, innovation is not a winner's game, it is a loser's game. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very comprehensive insight in what the Brainport Eindhoven region is doing. When we discussed how to manage this session, all of the speakers, I promised, they all promised not to speak longer than 10 minutes. Now, but I think you're ready to continue this discussion in the coffee break, even to invite everybody to come to Eindhoven and maybe even host one of the next wires in Eindhoven. So, yeah, let's move on. Sandor Erdo from the EUREKA chairmanship.
So thank you, Roland. And I should like to start with the title, actually, and calling attention to the fact that the main message of our presentation will be that the EUREKA is actually a natural partner for not only policy making, but also implementation at the regional level. So the messages will be actually argued for in the coming few minutes, and I think I will find the right buttons. Okay, so as you know, Hungary is the chairman of the EUREKA network since last July, and our chairmanship period had 4 priorities. One of them is the exploration of the regional dimension of EUREKA. In fact, EUREKA projects were present in almost all regions during the past more than 2 decades of the history of EUREKA, I mean 26 years of history of EUREKA, but no attempt has been made from the side of EUREKA to explore the particular characteristics and the particular messages of the regions to the overall policy of EUREKA. Why have we started to deal with the regionality and the cohesion policy aspects of EUREKA? Of course, austerity is one of the reasons. If the resources are not sufficient, then one should consider how to obtain more resources at the regional levels. And in fact, the regions are known to be the best places for the promotion and actually the performance of research and innovation. So at this level, one can find actually local resources in addition to the national and European funds. The cohesion policy funds represents a huge amount of money, and we are aware of it, but not all the participants of the EUREKA projects at the regional level were aware of it, in particular in the new member states, that such funds may also be used for innovation. And this is something which is a particular goal for the Hungarian chair, to call attention to these particular opportunities. And as we can see, the innovation part or component of the fund is also very attractive, 86 billion euros. This is something which we should keep in mind when we are dealing with regional innovation. When we started our chairmanship year, we had an objective to perform a project portfolio analysis and also mapping of the existing funding schemes which are available. Although we have identified good practices, this was another attempt for us for the network. As far as the results are concerned, we have identified high innovators within the regions at the territory of the EUREKA countries. As you can see, France, Germany, Norway, and Spain were the most innovative regions. They had the highest performance. The innovation divide can also be seen here, so you can see the low innovator regions, the average ones, and the highest innovators with different color. The darker the color is, the higher the innovation level is. What we can see here, that the low innovators are about 1/4 of the participants, the average innovators are about half, and another quarter is the high innovators. What is the role of EUREKA in this particular context? EUREKA can help reduce the gap between the low innovators and the higher innovators, and I can go back to the previous slide just to show that in case of EUREKA, 15% of the participants were belonging to the so-called low innovating regions, and these particular companies and participants had more than 50% connection with average innovators and 27% with high innovators. What does it mean? That EUREKA helps really to have the low innovators give a chance to cooperate with average or high innovators. So more than 3/4 of the participants in such projects are average or high innovators. So about the funding of the innovation from the cohesion policy funds. We have also made this survey, and as you can see, there are a few countries which have a prominent actually share and amount of cohesion funds dedicated to innovation. One of them is Poland, of course. Poland is the first, and he had the highest amount of money for innovation from the structural funds. However, if we consider the proportion, the percentage of usage of the innovation fund, of the cohesion policy fund for innovation, we have still several countries which have a prominent proportion. Denmark is one of them, and Finland is the other one. Now we can see in the figures the total amount dedicated to innovation. And what we can see is that Poland is really the first, followed by Spain and Czech Republic and the United Kingdom. And if we see the proportion here, we can see that the first is Denmark with 69%. That means that more than 2/3 of the cohesion policy funds are spent for innovation in Denmark. Netherlands has also a very good position, and the United Kingdom. While Poland, in this respect, is only in the middle of the participating countries. We had a few practical lessons already. One of them is we need to raise the awareness of all the regions that structural funds are available and can be used for innovation. We should continue a structured dialogue with EU initiatives and other ones, of course, and policymakers too, and should focus on cross-border and translational programs. These are actually all quite natural for EUREKA because we used to have such a dialogue. We have organized a few specific dedicated events during our chairmanship year to conduct such kinds of structural dialogues and give presentations on that. EUREKA has an active involvement and as a natural partner for the policy making and implementation at the regional level. We had a very well-developed network which is operating for more than 26 years all over the countries who are participating in it. And that means we have so-called national contact points, AGLRs and NPCs. The high-level group representatives, of course, are dealing with the national, are interacting with the national policy makers, and they have an influence on policy setting at the national level. And the NPCs may be of practical use for any kind of activity which should be done locally. They have a personal knowledge and connection with the major players of innovation within the regions. As far as the future is concerned, we are aware of the fact that the innovation, the spending, what is planned by the member states for the 2014 to the 2020 period of time is approximately the same as we had used before during the 2007 to 2030 period of time. So no significant changes are actually planned by the member states, and so as shown here. But I think it is already a kind of achievement that the figures are not drastically reduced, but are almost constant. This shows that the member states takes this policy seriously even for the future. We have a few simple conclusions and messages for the audience. Indeed, EUREKA, with its experience and wide network, can easily outreach all the local players and innovators and actors of the innovation, and may be a natural partner not only for the design, but also for the implementation of policies. We should make steps in due time to be involved and to offer our capacities and capabilities to other players of the regional innovation. And in this context, I should say that the chair, the incoming chair from July this year, which is Turkey, will also continue the preference of regional activities, even though they are outside of the Union. They have many innovative regions, and they pay particular attention to this aspect too. Thank you for your attention, and I should like to thank also to our colleagues, Nora for the Hungarian chair and Michel Andrieux from the EUREKA Secretariat, who have contributed to the particular studies presented here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this nice overview of EUREKA activities. I think EUREKA has a place, and EUREKA is filling a gap, and in particular when it comes to innovation and SMEs. I would like to move to the next presentation because we are already a bit behind schedule. Helena Nilsson from the Swedish Västra Götaland region.
That was nicely pronounced. Västra Götaland, West Sweden. So it's me and Mr. Toth standing between you and the coffee now. But I hope to keep your interest here while I go into presenting some key challenges that we're facing on a regional level when it comes to both policy and practice. In my presentation, I would like to focus on the reinvention or the redesign that we're working on right now of the innovation policy. I would like to also give you some examples of policies and programs that we're testing now before launching the new strategy. But first of all, the facts and figures. If we compare with other regions in Sweden, we're quite a large region. We're 1.6 billion people, inhabitants, but compared with most of you other regions, we're quite small. We have an interesting infrastructure with large universities like Chalmers University of Technology, Gothenburg University, approximately 95,000 students. We have lots of research institutes, very much focused on industry, technology, reflecting the industrial structure that we have. We're the home base of many large industrial companies, the home of the Volvo Group, SKF for roller bearings, AstraZeneca. And we're also having that as a key goal to keep being a highly industrialized region, keeping both the manufacturing and the knowledge production. So when we look at these rankings, which we do all the time, Västra Götaland or West Sweden rank very high. If we look at OECD rankings, innovation scoreboards, and I was glad to see that we were on Sandor's map as well. But what lie behind these rankings? As you said in the introduction here, that the industry in West Sweden invests highly in R&D. We have a number of 4.5% investments in R&D when compared to gross regional products. But if we look behind this, we have quite a low level of new startups. The attitudes to entrepreneurship is quite low as well. And we look at the small and medium-sized companies. They're not as knowledge intense as we would like them to be. So we have a lot of challenges, and we think that we share them with many regions and the national level in Sweden. So when we design the policies, we tend to do that very well aligned with both the national agenda and the European agenda. Here you can see a very simplified sketch over the policy framework in West Sweden, where on your left you see the vision and the growth schemes that are very much a bottom-up process, looking at the municipalities' priorities, the regional priorities. And we have the ambition both to influence the national agenda and the European agenda, as well as to use the instruments that are used on those levels as financing tools for implementing our strategy. One could say that since 2 years back, we have a new type of group with the national level working on comparing and aligning the national innovation strategy with the regional innovation strategy. Quite a new way of working, which you might want to learn more about. We have representatives from the national level here. Now, all of this is moving. You know that. We have the Horizon 2020, we have new structural funds. In Sweden, we have a new innovation strategy, and we are about to reinvent and have a new strategy from next year. So this is, of course, many challenges, but also opportunities in aligning and being more effective and efficient. If we look at how we have been working for the last 7 years, again, a very simplified sketch of the main pillars of the innovation strategy, we have, together with the regional partnerships, focused on these priorities, having the individual, the entrepreneur in center. And you will recognize these tools and policies that we have, but when it comes to entrepreneurship and new businesses, we've been working a lot with the attitudes, with the risk-taking, being more of a loser's landscape, as we heard earlier. We worked a lot with the seed capital and the venture capital, tapping into the European instruments. And when it comes to innovative SMEs, we've tested a lot of things, innovation vouchers, different kinds of support, innovation support to the small and medium-sized businesses. And of course, we work a lot with the prioritized industrialized clusters that we have, like in green chemistry, sustainable transports, life sciences. But this is all well. This is an infrastructure that we're trying to make more effective. And as I said, it taps well into a national and European context. But there are a number of challenges that we see ahead, and I will mention a few. And the first one is now we're working a lot more in the direction of facing societal challenges. And this puts the public sector more in focus. We have to develop much more the ability to formulate problems, to be part, really a stakeholder in these initiatives, strategic initiatives, public-private partnerships. And that means we have to have the capacity, the knowledge of IPR. We have to really put into place the procurement policies that we're talking about. So this is quite a new role, and it tests us, really. And we also have to be more oriented towards test and demonstration. We've heard this earlier, but I'm talking even beyond the test facilities and infrastructure. I'm talking about testing in real life, in the infrastructure that public stakeholders often can supply, like in the healthcare sector, public transports. So this is something we're working very heavily. And also we have the global links. Of course we know the academia and the companies, they're global, having networks, but now we're talking about public-private partnerships having to cooperate with other platforms in the world. This is difficult. So we talk about, when we're redefining the strategy, we talk about the region as a living lab. And I will give you 3 short examples of how we're trying new ways of working. We're trying to look into critically our cluster development strategies, looking into how we've worked so far and seeing how we can improve. 2 years ago, approximately, we started out with the life science initiatives that we have, which is very much focused on biomaterials and clinical trials and research. And we didn't do the old ordinary way, the analysis and the SWOT and all that. We engaged a person that we knew was well-renowned among all the stakeholders, and as nationally and European level as well. That this person you see here, happy person, is Mr. Ingvar Carlsson, is a former Prime Minister of Sweden. He was actually the Prime Minister when Sweden applied for the Swedish membership in the EU. And we gathered the core stakeholders, AstraZeneca, small medtech companies, the academia, and he sort of had a process for 6 months interviewing these people and coming up with a strategic agenda, which was very much a process way of working. And this agenda is the one we're now implementing. One of the sort of priorities is related to the healthcare sector. And the regional authorities in Western Sweden are the ones responsible for healthcare provision. So now we have a real challenge using the healthcare infrastructure to work with innovation based on the good position we have in clinical trials and research. So we have initiated something called Gothia Forum for Clinical Research, and it's led by the healthcare, by the hospitals, but the companies are participating and the academia as well. And this is one of the core sort of competitive advantage that we know that regions and nations can have, is to provide a good, ethically effective, efficient infrastructure for clinical research and trials. So now we have been working in this way for about 2 years, and we're learning all the time new things that we have to develop within the healthcare sector. But we've sort of unleashed a very large potentials within the employees, working with new ideas. They can put them into practice very easily. So this is one example. Another one, very briefly, is the area of sustainable transports, which I know many of you are working with as well, of course. We saw a very fragmented national and regional policy 2 years ago. We needed to sort of make this agenda more clear. So we sort of turned the wheel around and invited national agencies to the region, saying, can we develop an agenda, a regional agenda, which is interesting for the national level, and how can we relate this to the European level? So we there launched this program in motion, which includes a lot of financing, focusing on centers of knowledge, centers of excellence, test infrastructure, but it also is directed to us as public policymakers owning the public transport. So we have a lot of initiatives going on now looking at the procurement issues, putting these beautiful analysis and other suggestions of how to work into practice. Difficult. We've also worked very hard with connecting in motion and the activities here to right now it's the 7th framework program and the EIT. One example of initiative that has been launched now is SAS0, Active Safety Test Area, which is sort of a flagship initiative in motion. And I bring this up because this is not only sort of a consortia with academia, research institutes and the companies, but it's also sort of a platform where we really can put synergies into practice when it comes to financing instruments. This is regional, national funding, company funding, academic funding, and we have structural fund, regional fund initiatives, and we hope this to be a magnet for the larger European research and innovation funding as well. Within the framework of In Motion, we've also started to set out the new agenda for the safe and green area. And we've used the tool, Regions of Knowledge. We've mobilized around this tool, and we think it's a very good way of getting stakeholders together with a goal and assuring that we are find other stakeholders in other European regions to work with. So the Regions of Knowledge project called SAGE, Safe and Green Road Vehicles. And now I feel someone walking behind my back. So this third, I only mentioned that very briefly, about Living Lab. We have an initiative now starting up where we actually use Gothenburg as the lab where we work with societal challenges that cities are facing when it comes to social issues, logistics, energy, etc. And this is an interesting project because here we have really platforms looking the same way all over the world where we're learning from each other. And just to summarize, all of this, this mobilizing and setting common goals, it really needs professional infrastructure. And we've worked very hard in West Sweden, putting the science parks in a new role, being innovation platforms that can facilitate these processes. And we were proud to see that the OECD saw these platforms as something new where we really could build in trust. So if you're interested in learning more about that, how they work in a practical way, we have a session later on with Lindholmen Science Park. So.
Thank you very much. We have heard now only from 2 regions, thinking that we have, I don't know, some 300 in Europe. We must be so rich, it's just incredible. We can be proud, I think. What I would like to do now is to move straight on to the next presentation. But what I liked about this presentation, one aspect is that the Prime Minister was in your presentation. And I think besides the fact that well-functioning regional innovation ecosystem needs all the necessary actors and all the necessary ingredients, I think it is also important that it has leadership. And looking how complex innovation is, how many, let's say, ministries or director generals in the Commission are involved in that, I think it should also be somehow Chefsache, as I would say in German. Atilla Toth from Novitech, our last presenter, please.
Okay, it was very pleasant to hear the success story of very advanced regions. So my task is only to tell what is missing. I don't know if it will be so pleasant like before, but my opinion is that 90% of the regions needs more assistance and more change of paradigm. So my lecture indicates what is the generic component of building innovation zone as a region of innovative workplaces. Innovative workplaces, we don't mean by innovative the furniture and the infrastructure. We have plenty of investment for this, but people working together, collaborating, creating new values. I emphasize creating new values. So, okay, from here is important that I'm in person a technical guy, influenced by American School of Innovation. And what is important, what I'm saying is my 22 years experience of my SME management experience, and I'm pleased to be member, our company, our SME group, member of Knowledge for Innovation. So here is the content. So since we are a business process innovation company, so we also consider regional innovation as a process, orchestrated multi-level process, and we have a model. This is point number 1, of course. We have no time here, but if you leave your business card, I can send you the whole model is it in computer business process model. And then what is the workplace innovation, the neglected resource, as basic cells of regional innovation, current EU policies, good examples, and way forward. Of course, I would like to finish very quickly because I would like to keep your feedback on this subject. So in my presentation, I only defined the crucial quo vadis domine points, what I would like to get your feedback. So my presentation is focusing on the red parts. So we don't speak about the needs. Needs are regional specifics, but we would like to speak or discuss and policy support on activities in the platform. We have heard that the platforms are important, and the workplaces for creation new values. So here is the reference model. We say 3 levels. The purple inputs and outputs are prosperity new values, and the green ones are enablers. So regional level, organization level, that means workplace level, and innovation skills development, that means person, citizen, or employer level. All these levels must function in coherence, otherwise it's not working. And of course, we have here detailed models. Who are the, maybe here, who are the, what happened? Okay, sorry. Who are the actors on each level, and who are the inputs, outputs, everything is described. Therefore, because if we are interacting with the region or in our internal innovation policy, we consider this model, yes, because finally I think we are not in the air, but we are in an environment which is working or not, but we must consider these activities as a reality. It is here, you know, innovation, skills development. So, again, if you are interested, please leave me your business card on this model. Workplace innovation. So, as I mentioned, innovation, instant sources innovation. We are speaking about CO2 footprint of the EU citizens and so on. But we don't speak about the new added value footprints of EU citizens. Who created what new values? Of course, there are two things. Workplace, which is doing the routine things, that means creating routine values, products and services, and innovative workplaces which at the same time create new values, addition to the standard values, additional values. Hope I go back. This is important, the bottom line. 80% of innovation in the US originated from workplaces. And this 80% is totally neglected in our policy support. At least, as my observation as a beneficiary, bottom-end beneficiary, is that this is not considered sufficiently. Relevance, why? Relevance of today's workplace. I say not about the leading regions, you know, but about the rest, Central Eastern Europe, all Mediterranean regions, and so on. These are the prevailing, let's say, eroding factors which prevent workplaces to be open to become entrepreneur, co-entrepreneur, to have a trust, loss of trust, and all these drivers are necessary drivers for creation added value. You could read. Now, what is important? This here you see 4 blocks, 4 drivers, or how I can say. So, in general, EU citizen is ready, but for what? We have to give them a clear perspective. But in 4 components. First of all, must have information, have to create new value, have to be more useful. Then must have a motivation, but motivation is, if he has some information, motivation. But on the other hand, he must see the opportunity. That yes, if I want something, here are the opportunities, not on the big projects, but on the workplaces. Opportunity. If he something designs or proposes, the boss will not tell, we have no money, we now have to save cost, austerity measures, always, what we are listening. Or communication also from government, austerity. But at the end, I have to say it, capabilities. Innovation has specific capabilities. But the good message, innovation can be taught. You can learn. It is not true that we are, this is not possible. Of course, because we are mixing innovation with invention. Of course, invention is other business, but the capabilities for innovation means collaboration, trust, leadership, open, and time management. So here we see, and Roland, please, when you come, I finish, because really, leave 5 minutes for questions. So this is the most important task, the diagram. Here we have social groups in general, in lagging or follower regions is in hesitating, waiting state, waiting for the election of Greece, waiting for the government, the change of government, or austerity. Okay. So the goal of policy support, and you should put afternoon into your recommendation, I'm sorry not here, have to accelerate this transformation process from state time T1 to T2. T2 means there's agile social groups having information, motivation, capabilities, opportunities. And these groups, then they can innovate. They can innovate. And so far today, the whole conference is related to how to utilize the research results in innovation. I remind you again, this is 20% of the input. So, and this is for university lectures, workplace. We can consider workplace everything, yes, even the family, yes, public sector. But there are specifics of drivers. So what else? Good example, policy effects, really, you can read. The main problem is innovation is still treated as a little brother of research. All these figures, GDP percentage, should be enlightened. What is research part and what is real innovation? Support of workplaces or governance, coherence, coordination. So, and SMEs, the workplaces, I don't agree, and this is the other question to discuss, that the current research infrastructure or what research measures and calls are suitable also for innovation. Because research is for 2 million citizens maybe of European Union, but we need a question of size, 480 million people to wake up to get for the change, for the transformation. So this needs different measures, small money, but many grants and big coordination. Okay, and these are portals, you know, social innovation, how it works. This is the portal what Mr. Strauss mentioned, that daily morning portal in my company, when all employees see their task, each task has the result, value, because innovation is a process of change with measurable values. If we don't measure the values, this is lost. This get a high part. And also they can see the yellow part, the ideas, innovation ideas, the status for each employee, and so on. So this is call for broadband policy action. That means how to support workplaces, small grants, mini grants. Here are good examples, even from the Netherlands, Luxembourg, from my country, Slovakia. So people are ready, but they want to be correctly contacted and communicated to gain for the transformation. So way forward, I think our association, the KFR, should play in this innovation policy communication good, how to say it, facilitating role. Thank you very much. And waiting for your questions in the...
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Atilla, Toth.